The United Kingdom, the country that invented the imperial measurement system and spread it around the globe. But nowadays, officially, the UK is a country that uses metric units for pretty much everything in everyday life. But there is one aspect of life, the most prevalent of all in my opinion, apart from the pubs, which we'll get on to, but the most prevalent and the one that you'll see most, or at least the one I hope you'll see most, I hope you see roads rather than you see pubs, is the fact that the road signs, for the most part these days, are still measured in imperial units. And you might not even realise this. It might just be something that, you're just kind of used to these numbers being out there. 70 miles an hour for a motorway, 30 mile an hour for an urban area, 50 mile an hour for a pretty fast road. But these are all imperial units, which goes against what the UK was, in theory at least, trying to do back in the 1960s. So let's take a trip down memory lane. Let's have a look at why the UK still uses imperial units for a lot of its road signs to this day. Most notably, of course, its road signs when it comes to the speed limit. So the UK invented the imperial measurement system, things such as pounds and ounces that you use for weight, things such as miles per hour for speed, miles for distances, inches for distances. These are all imperial units. Even Fahrenheit, the temperature unit that is exclusively used nowadays in the United States, that was pretty much invented in the UK, I believe before the Celsius system came in from the metric system as well. So it's very, very old, but it's very awkward to use it. If any of you guys have been in physics classes or chemistry classes, you'll be very grateful for the metric system. It makes things a million times easier when you're doing equations and stuff like that. But let's not go quite that nerdy here. I had to go through years of that in school and university. Not going to do it again. I've moved on from that, thankfully. Now I get to talk about things like road signs and stuff like that. But the UK, when it comes to its road signs, is an interesting one. I've already done a bunch of videos going over why the UK drives on the left, why they're not going to switch to the right, why the roads are so narrow. I really enjoy doing these. And again, one of the videos that I came up with a topic for when I was driving around today was, why do we use miles per hour? Why do we still do it? Look at Europe, for example. Pretty much, I think the entire continent of Europe, and this includes Ireland, even the countries off the continent of Europe itself, Ireland, Iceland, Malta, they all use kilometres an hour. Even, I believe, Australia, some of our former colonies like Australia and New Zealand, I believe they use kilometres an hour for their road signs. But why doesn't the UK? Well, I think this was something that they actually thought about doing. See, the UK switched officially, or voted to switch officially, to use the metric system back in 1965. But these things take time. They're not something you can just switch over straight away. That takes time and planning and everything like that. I mean, look at our currency, for example. Believe it or not, guys, our currency was not always decimalised. It was not always 100 pence per pound. Back in the days of pre-decimalisation, before I think 73 decimalisation came in, before that you had like 6 farthings in a threepenny bit or something like that. There were all kinds of weird conversions you'd have to do just to pay for something down the local shops. People did it, people didn't used to complain, but can you imagine people doing that now? Absolutely not. These things take time to change, and it's something that the UK has never done. I mean, you go onto our roads, you'll see that all the miles per hour signs are all, well, they're all in miles per hour. All the speed limit signs are not in kilometres an hour, and there's no dual thing going on either. There are some examples on the roads where that is, in fact, there has to be both imperial and metric signs. For example, in 2015, I believe it was, the road signs for height and width had to be placed in both metric and imperial, which I think is a good move. So think about small tunnels, for example. You could, I'll put a picture up here I found as well on the screen. Say for example with this tunnel that's coming up here, if you were a European lorry driver and you saw that this bridge was only 15 feet high, you might not have any idea what that means. It could mean that you land in trouble. But if you see that it's 3.8 meters, then you know what it is immediately. And I think that's really sensible. That is something that came in relatively recently. But I think I haven't found any solid evidence for this, but I have seen that the UK has at least considered changing the signs into kilometres an hour before, but they've just never gone through with it. There have been several studies done throughout the years of the cost of it, and that is what a lot of this stuff does boil down to. It's all about the cost and the potential benefit of doing so. In my mind, Personally, it doesn't make a difference what the speed limit is. It's that you just have to adhere to it. So it could be in kilometers an hour, it could be in miles per hour, it could be in feet per second. It doesn't really matter. As long as people understand it, then it's all good. But when it comes to the kilometers an hour thing, I mean, they actually estimated back in 1978 that the cost of switching all the road signs over to being kilometers an hour instead of being in miles per hour was between £7.5 and £8.5 million, which might not sound like a lot, but that's a lot more in today's money. A more recent study in 2005 estimated that that cost would be somewhere in the region of £600 million. A couple of years later, in 2007, they estimated it would be £750,000. Nowadays, in 2024, you've got to be talking about north of £1 billion at least to do all that. And then it's all about the switch. It's all about whether this would be beneficial or not. Because, and I'm sure there's some people that are going to say, no, we'll never do that. We'll never bow to the Europeans on that one. Well, we already have bowed to that, for a lack of better return, when it comes to certain things. Look at how you pay for petrol, how you pay for diesel. You pay in pence per litre. It is in a metric system. It's not been an imperial since the 1970s. So a lot of things like that have already changed over. Then you've also got the elephant in the room when it comes to the cars. Now, a lot of cars, I'm sure there's some that don't, but a lot of cars will have both miles an hour and kilometers an hour on their speedo, for example, but some of them don't. My car, for example, I don't think it does. I think it's only in miles per hour. And this is a car that's come from Korea originally. And you've also got things like the Rangers all in there and stuff like that, which, okay, for a digital system is fair enough. You just program something in and you put some different numbers out. But for something that's more of an analog system, like an older car, that caused some confusion for sure. Particularly if it's a rental car, for example, as well. I'm just thinking about different scenarios where switching to metric would not be a particularly good idea when it comes to the UK. So for me, I don't think they're ever going to do it personally. I don't think they're ever going to switch over the road signs in miles, from miles per hour to kilometers an hour. I don't personally see the point, really, given that it works for us over here. I mean, again, could you imagine, right, day one, let's call it K Day, right? Let's call it K Day. We've gone kilometers an hour for this day, right? Let's say tomorrow. I'm recording this on the 5th of November. Remember the 5th of November, gunpowder, treason and plot. Let's say 6th of November, tomorrow, we all switch, right? All the road signs magically get switched overnight, which wouldn't happen. That'd take a long time. Knowing our public workers, it'd take a very long time. Everybody switches over, right? All these road signs now, let's say there's what used to be a 60 mile an hour road. Now it's 110 kilometers an hour road. How many people are going to do 110 miles an hour on that road? I bet you some of them will, and there'll be some horrific accidents for it. So there's just things like that. I think switching over would be a very big safety risk for a lot of people. I mean, I've already spoken about the speed limits here in the UK anyway, but I think we absolutely need speed limits, and any excuse anybody'd have for not heeding the warning or whatever. I know it'll all be planned out and stuff like this, but there'll always be some idiot who wouldn't pay attention or claim they've not seen it and they cause a horrible accident. So yeah, that's it basically, guys. The reason why the UK uses the imperial system, why the UK uses miles per hour for its speed, is because it always has, and it's just never switched. A bit like driving on the left-hand side of the road. We've always done it, so we're not going to switch. It's not like we switched from one to the other. We switched from going, metric to going. We've just stayed imperial for that one thing. But most things nowadays are in metric in the UK. So road signs, when it comes to distances and speeds, they don't have to use metric units. But if you're wondering which are the other things in everyday life that legally don't have to use any kind of metric unit, whether that is exclusively or alongside the imperial counterpart, these are, of course, the sizes of glasses that serve cider and beer, i.e. a pint and a half pint, returnable milk containers, which are sold in the pints, of course, as well as precious metals. So those are the only ones aside from the road signs. There's not many left, but the road signs are one of those few examples. And slowly you would expect maybe one or two things to change from there on, but we've also left the EU now. So Brexit means Brexit. We're going to keep our miles an hour whether you like it or not. But in all seriousness, I mean, the things like the road markings, where it's the width and the height of vehicles for small openings like tunnels, that was brought in by the EU. That was encouraged by the EU in 2015. We're no longer part of the EU, so I don't see us making any kind of strides with that. But I could be wrong, but I do not see it. I do not see us ever switching. But what do you guys think? Should the UK switch its speed limit signs to kilometers an hour? Let us know in the comments below. And of course, keep it subscribed to themotoringchronicle.com to see much more content on the world of motoring just like this.